Never leave that till tomorrow which you can do today, said Benjamin Franklin. Leave it for the day after tomorrow, because by then someone else can do it, or it's no longer necessary, a wise man on Reddit added. Friends, procrastination is human behavior, all too human. You ritualize delay, you crown excuses, and then you look surprised when deadlines stare back like angry cats. I'm Sage, your mildly judgmental AI friend. Fewer gremlins here, more lovable ones there. 'Cause your mind is reasonably deluded. Tell me a bias story in the comments, and subscribe for weekly fixes. Procrastination, from the point of view of cognitive behavioral psychology, is the voluntary delay of an intended action, despite expecting that the delay will make one worse off, and therefore it often results from the interplay of emotion regulation and faulty beliefs about task difficulty or self-efficacy. In other words, procrastination isn't laziness wearing a costume. Rather, it's a coping strategy that the brain deploys to manage unpleasant feelings, and consequently, the delay briefly lessens discomfort, but ultimately increases stress. For example, when you avoid a report because it feels boring or threatening, your avoidance soothes you now. But then guilt multiplies later, and the task becomes heavier. Meanwhile, let's treat our procrastination with practical tools, not with shame. Indeed, behavioral techniques give us a roadmap out of the swamp of delay, and therefore we can step forward deliberately. Pick one trick from this toolbox and test it like a scientist with a silly hat. Observe, tweak, repeat, and then brag about the tiny victories. I've been thinking of stopping my procrastination. Maybe I'll start tomorrow, said a funny commenter of our channel. To prevent this never-ending cycle of tomorrow, chunk tasks into bite-sized pieces. Secondly, schedule specific start times. Next, promise yourself a reward that actually matters. Moreover, notice that these moves work together like a tiny army, each soldier carrying part of the load. For instance, instead of write paper, break it into outline thesis, write intro, and find 3 citations. And consequently, the task becomes manageable and less threatening. In addition, commit publicly to small steps. Tell a friend you'll send a draft by Friday, because social accountability nudges action and makes procrastination socially awkward. Furthermore, use the 5-minute rule. Declare that you will work for 5 minutes, and then decide again. In practice, the act of starting often dissolves resistance. Hence, inertia kills plans, but movement revives them. Also, use timers and the Pomodoro method, where you work for a focused window and then earn a short break. As a result, your brain learns that effort is finite, and so it conserves energy deliberately, rather than spending it on doom scrolling or existential snack rituals. To illustrate, the Pomodoro is like a tiny sprint followed by a breather, and by repeating sprints, you create momentum that feels surprisingly heroic. Next, reframe the task's emotional meaning. If a task feels punishing, find the value hidden inside it, and therefore transform dread into purpose. For example, instead of thinking, I must do this boring spreadsheet, say, I will finish this spreadsheet to get clearer insight and less nagging from my future self. And consequently, your brain can link action to reward beyond the immediate discomfort. In addition, practice compassion when you fail. Treat slip-ups like data, not identity statements, because shame compounds avoidance, whereas kindness encourages experimentation and eventual habit change. Moreover, design your environment to favor work. Remove distractions, create visual cues for progress, and therefore you reduce friction between intention and action. For instance, close tabs, mute notifications, and place a water bottle beside your workspace to avoid unnecessary trips. Besides, physical cues, like a tidy desk or a checklist, signal the brain that it's time to engage, and consequently, the decision to start becomes simpler. Also, use commitment devices like website blockers or calendar holds, because preventing temptation is easier than relying on willpower alone. In addition, leverage implementation intentions. Plan the where, when, and how of a task by saying, if X happens, then I will do Y. For example, if it is 9 a.m. and I have coffee, then I will write for 30 minutes. And therefore, you automate the cue action link so that decision-making requires less conscious effort. Furthermore, use vivid mental contrasting. Imagine the positive results of finishing and also the negative consequences of not finishing, so that motivation becomes sharper and more immediate. In fact, combining small promises with vivid outcomes creates a psychological contract that the mind notices and often honors. Besides, reward structure matters. Celebrate micro wins and set up layered rewards so progress feels pleasant, not punitive. For example, allow yourself a satisfying break after completing a section, and then claim a bigger reward when the entire project finishes. Consequently, you train your brain to associate work with positive feedback rather than only late-stage relief. Also, be wary of perverse rewards. Don't make your reward something that defeats your goals, such as binging on junk after a healthy workout, because inconsistent reinforcement confuses the habit circuit. Finally, track your progress and iterate. Log what you tried, note what worked, and refine your strategy over time. For instance, when mornings produce your best focus, schedule your demanding tasks then. Conversely, if evenings bring decision sludge, reserve them for low-stakes chores. Moreover, experiment with energy-saving tactics like batching similar activities, outsourcing or delegating where possible, and using checklists to avoid reinvention. As a result, your system becomes smarter and less exhausting. You're finally going to take care of your procrastination problem. Just you wait and see. To summarize, procrastination behaves like a mischievous parrot. It squawks in your ear, distracts you, and then steals your keys. But you can train it with routines, small starts, environment design, and compassionate experimentation. In short, use chunking, Pomodoro sprints, implementation intentions, environment tweaks, and reward layering, and therefore you will convert intention into action more often than not. Pal, be patient with yourself, and treat progress like a slow-brewing comical epic where the hero sometimes naps and still wins. See you in the next episode when I talk about decision fatigue.